Welcome to this 15-night cruise aboard Fred Olsen's cruise ship Balmoral. The itinerary starts at Rosyth in Scotland and takes us up the Norwegian coast, stopping at Andalsnes, Tromso and Svalbard, before going on to Spitzbergen and Svalbard. We are heading to Longyearbyen in Svalbard, which is the world's most northerly town and only 500 miles from the North Pole. This is about as far north as you can go on an ordinary cruise ship. There are cruises which go around the Spitsbergen archipelago, but these are expedition ships and tend to be rather expensive. On the way back we take a different route down the coast, stopping at Sortland and Kristiansand. There are only 6 ports of call on this trip, but there's plenty of scenic cruising in between. In this video I'll be concentrating on the wonderful Norwegian scenery as well as the ports of call, rather than giving a day-by-day account of life on board a cruise ship. I have a separate video giving a full walk around of the Balmoral if you'd like to check that out. After a very smooth check-in we get our first glimpse of the Balmoral. Rather strangely, we have to get a bus to the ship as we're not allowed to walk. Sail away was due to be at 5 p.m, but these guys on the pier took so long to load the ship that we were delayed quite considerably. We were finally underway just after 6:30 p.m. There's something to see on this cruise as soon as we leave port and pass under the 3 Forth bridges. The first is the Queensferry Bridge. And then we pass under the Forth Road Bridge. Before coming to the most famous of them all, the Forth Railway Bridge. After a day at sea, we come to our first port of call, which is Andalsnes. Right outside the exit to the port is this newly built cable car going up the nearby mountain of Romsdalseggen. It's obviously been built to rip off cruise ship passengers, as the 3-minute journey up to the top and then back again costs £42 per person. If you're fit enough, you can get up Romsdalseggen for free by using the hiking path, which is about 1 kilometre through the village. I wasn't going to go all the way to the top, but wanted to go far enough to see whether there was a decent view over the town. The one shore excursion we didn't want to miss on this trip was up the famous Sptizbergen road, a winding mountain road that ascends to the top of the pass through 11 hairpin bends. Here are some highlights of the drive. If you'd like to see more, there's a separate video covering the entire drive up and back again. Once at the top, there's a 500-metre long walkway linking 2 observation points for a grand view down to the valley. Before heading back to the ship, we took a detour to Sptizbergen, or the Trolls Wall. At 1,000 metres high, this is the tallest vertical overhanging rock face in Europe. One final look at Romsdalseggen before we enjoy a couple of days of scenic cruising on the way to Tromso. This is the famous mountain of Torghatten, which means top hat. That patch you can see, which looks like snow, is actually a hole right through the mountain. As we cross the Arctic Circle, marked by this monument, we're entering the land of the midnight sun. It's a beautiful day as we arrive in Tromso. Our plan for today is to walk across the bridge to visit the Arctic Cathedral and then go on to the cable car up the mountain of Fjellheisen. The cable car is half the price of the one at Andalsnes, but still not cheap at £20 each. Still, it turned out well worth doing, with some splendid views at the top, especially on a day like this. After that excellent walk, we're back in town for a quick look round the harbour. And a visit to the Polar Museum. That's it for our visit to Tromso. We now set sail for our next port of call, which is Honningsvåg. Later that evening I decided to check out the famous midnight sun. It was in fact just after midnight, and I was surprised at how light it was. It was almost like 6 o'clock in the evening. Our next port of call was Honningsvåg, which is about as far north as you can go on the Norwegian mainland. Honningsvåg is basically just a small fishing town. All of the shore excursions went much further afield, but we spent a couple of enjoyable hours just wandering around the town. This is Bumsa, a famous St Bernard dog who was enrolled in the Norwegian Navy during the Second World War. In 1940 his ship was transferred to Rosyth in Scotland, where we started this cruise, and he spent most of the rest of the war in Aberdeen and Montrose. After a pleasant day in Honningsvåg, it was time to head off again and continue our cruise to Spitsbergen. In most of the ports and the fjords, a local pilot comes aboard. As the ship heads out to open seas, a small boat comes to pick up the pilot and return him to the port. It's always interesting watching them try to match the speed of the ship. The highlight as we left Honningsvåg was supposed to be cruising alongside the massive cliffs of the North Cape. But unfortunately the sea fog was down and we saw very little. Day 8 was to be a scenic cruise around Bear Island, but the fog was still there and we saw absolutely nothing. We did catch a glimpse of a few whales on the way, but the sea was a bit rough and they were difficult to film. Later on in the day we caught our first glimpse of Spitsbergen. On day 9 we reached Svalbard and the most spectacular scenery so far. The Norwegian glacier is at the end of the fjord and we turn back to head to Longyearbyen. On the way back we passed Pyramiden, which is an abandoned Russian mining town. Although there's no longer any mining carried out, the Russians do keep 6 people there during the summer, as under the constitution of Svalbard, any settlement which is abandoned returns to the Norwegian government. A couple of lucky photographers got the chance to head off towards the glacier to do some filming. Our first sight of Longyearbyen was the airport, which is a couple of miles outside town. And the town itself was quite striking with all the different colours of the buildings. Longyearbyen is 800 miles inside the Arctic Circle and only 500 miles from the North Pole, making it the world's most northerly settlement. Almost all of the cafes, shops, bars and other facilities are located on one main street in the centre of town. We're staying overnight in Longyearbyen, so join us in part 2 for a more extensive look around the town, followed by the long journey back to Rosyth.